class that I will hopefully not be taking a full hour for. I'm going to mute you guys and allow you guys to unmute yourselves also. Okay, 1 second. 2 more coming in. Greetings, guys. Hello. I'm gonna do a class in a week or two on Canva, how to make, I actually made this one in PowerPoint, but how to make graphics that are hopefully nice to look at. I kind of like this one a lot. I like the background a lot. I use it on all my, waiting rooms, so to speak, if you would. But this is not a very difficult thing to put together once you know how to use the software. It's really not hard at all. And if you're going to run anything online, I highly recommend using some sort of graphic design program, and that Canva works pretty well. Okay. So how to sell investment properties to millennials. So technically, you can sell these to anybody, but I promoted this as millennials for a particular reason. Because if they're going to buy an investment property with the structure that we're going to be talking about, they have to live in the property. So we are talking about 2 to 4 unit properties here, right? And we use an FHA. They're going to live in this as a primary residence. So FHA for these 2 to 4 unit properties is a minimum down payment at 3.5%. Not bad, right? I mean, it's the same amount as if you were buying a regular house. Really good. So the minimum or the maximum loan amount in these counties and a lot of other surrounding counties as well, $331,760. So that's the loan amount. That is not the purchase price. So we're going to get squeezed pretty tight when we start talking about 4 unit properties, but there's plenty of 2 to 3 unit properties also. We're going to pull up the MLS in a little bit, and I'll show you kind of how to shop for these types of houses and properties. Something to take into consideration. I've seen a couple of them here where they were mobile homes. This is not going to work for these. So you cannot buy a mobile home as an investment property, at least not when you own mortgage. So keep in mind, down payment is super reasonable, and loan amount has gone up in the years. The last couple of years, it's gone up over 300,000. So there's some options here that weren't there even a couple of years ago, right? So why sell to millennials, right? So first of all, the rents will sometimes cover the mortgage. And I mean sometimes. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, especially when they're living there. But many millennials are renting in apartment complexes, and it's an easy shift for them to go to a duplex, a triplex, or a quad, right? So this is a much easier transition than if you're telling somebody, hey, you're already living in a single family home, why don't you move into a duplex? They may not be something that they're so interested in, but if they're younger, millennials are super into investment properties, way more than you would ever think. We do lots of loans for lots of different types of people. And I talk to a lot of millennials, and they are really into investment properties. Millennials are way more educated than you may think. When they're sitting there just looking into their cell phone and everything, sometimes they're doing a lot of reading, research, because information is just so easily accessible. If somebody's naturally curious like myself, which I am super curious about everything, information is so easy to come by that you can just satisfy all of your curiosity so quickly, So if they're willing to move out of something like their parents' home or an apartment complex, or if they're just simply willing to move into one of these types of properties, they are a really good demographic to market to, because they don't need to live there for the next 30 years. They only really need to live there for a year if it's FHA, right? So some of the other good things about buying a duplex or a 3 or 4 unit property is that it is really good experience to manage your own properties, right? I don't know if any of you guys actually own investment properties. I do, and I self-manage them. And sometimes they're a headache, but they're a heck of a lot easier if you live there, right? I live in a house that has a garage apartment. I have a tenant in there, and every once in a while something goes wrong. It's the easiest one to manage of all, because the other ones are all in other places, right? So keep this in mind, that if they're ever, because, a lot of people like the idea of passive income, and they, I don't want to use the word lazy, but, some people like the idea of getting paid for not having to do anything, and investment property certainly fills that kind of context, right? So self-managing, if they're going to be a landlord, they have to know how to manage their own properties, at least on some level. You can't just give it to a manager and let them take care of everything, because they'll just call you and tell you that they have a $300 repair that they're charging you $600 for. I don't know if anyone have any experience with that. That's always fun. So living in the property and self-managing the property is a really, really good experience. One that I think that they would benefit from for the rest of their lives, you know? So keep this in mind as well. There is going to be mortgage insurance on this mortgage, but it is not their enemy. Okay. The mortgage insurance is not their enemy because it allows a really low barrier of entry for investment properties, especially like this type, you know? So it just, for sure, it is not something that they want to, you know, get really, really worried about it because there's a mortgage insurance, because mortgage insurance is a bad reputation for sure. The borrower is paying paying insurance for the lender. It is like the worst deal in the world. How they ever sold this to the public, I have no idea. This is a guy that can sell ice to Eskimos, whoever got everybody to start doing this. But this is their standard. You know, they're taking a risk. They're the primary owner in the property, and I guess that's what it is. They're like, this is the only way they're going to do the deal, I guess. But remember, it's not their enemy because it allows them into home ownership, you know. And if they, as the property appreciates in value and that property amortizes, the loan to value is going to decrease, and then they can refinance down the line if they wanted to, you know, refinance the mortgage insurance right off the property or into a lower interest rate. But it'll probably be higher because it's an investment property. But anyway, many reasons to refi along the way. So, okay. One of the nice things about these properties as well is that we can use 75% of the rental income to go to their mortgage qualification. Okay. So let's look at some numbers. I'm going to switch screens here. I'm going to switch slides and try not to get ahead of me on the numbers. I'm going to go over all the numbers, and that's a lot. I know that's a lot when you first see it all. Let's just stay up here. The first thing we're going to be doing is looking at a duplex. This is the MLS number. I'm going to implore you to not run to the MLS to look up the listing just yet. But here's the address, so you can look this up at a later day if you want. So purchase price on this duplex is $135,000. Really not bad, right? 2 units for $135,000. It's $67,000 and change per unit. So remember, we're using 3.5% down. So this is what their loan amount is going to be. These numbers are going to come in handy later. This is what their down payment is going to be, not including closing costs, right? Because 3.5%, $4,700, not a lot of money. Their mortgage payment for just principal and interest at a 4.25 interest rate is going to be $654 here, right? And change. So this is not including taxes and insurance, and I'm doing that on purpose. And we're going to get to that why, because this is a fixed number. The other ones are not ultimately. So in this duplex, there's a 1-2 that's renting at $675, and there's a 2-1 that's renting at $675 as well. Now, remember, the buyer has to move into one of these units because this is a primary residence. So we are not going to count these numbers for right now. And 675 times 12 is 8,100, and that is what the income on the property is currently, at least at that time. Because I think on the MLS, this is full, and remember, your buyer will have to remove the tenant to then be able to move into the property, right? And so these are what the expenses are. This is what the taxes are, at least on the MLS. I just took it right off the MLS. The insurance, I'm estimating this at $1,300 a year. I do not know if that's accurate, but it's close enough, we'll say. So these two together equal another $176 in that we have to add to their monthly mortgage payment, which is here. And so basically, that mortgage payment goes from $654 to $830. And then I'm adding, because we're talking about expenses here, I'm adding another $3,000 a year in expenses. I know that this number can be different for sure, but we want to have them have some sort of a cushion, some sort of a reserve in case something goes wrong. If you guys have ever owned investment properties, every once in a while, boom, there goes your air conditioning unit. And now you have to replace an AC unit. And it may be more than $3,000, maybe $4,000, $4,500, depending on the size of the house, depending on how well you can negotiate that. That's a negotiable number. And so let's just break that down to $250 a month, because in case they ever shift this off to management, there's a ton of things that can fall into this category. Now, I had to put some number there. Somebody else trying to come in. I had to put some number here just because you have to have some expenses here, right? So I'm not breaking down a full investment property on this presentation. That is one that we can do another day. But as of today, this is not the purpose of this presentation. So this is while the buyer is living there, right? So now, as you can notice, the PITI is going to be higher than their income on the property, right? But when the buyer moves out in a year, people don't always have a tendency to live in duplexes, 3s and 4s for, long extended periods of time, but it's an FHA and they have to live there for at least a year. So let's say they move out in a year. So we can now double our income, right? Because that 2-1 that they had to live in is going to open up, and that is going to become available income for us. We're just going to use the same numbers are on the MLS. We're not going to project what those numbers are, and that's going to give us $1,350 a month. And sorry. So one of the things about this is that this is not a fixed number, right? We know that the PI number is fixed, but this is going to increase in time if your buyer is going to responsibly rent their property at market value. This is going to go up every year or two, or however long he wants to wait. When I was looking at the market, I didn't do a deep dive on how much the rents were going for, but a lot of times people will just keep these numbers low just to keep them full, And so once we take our mortgage payment and we add our expenses to it that we got from right here, this is what our totally monthly expenses are going to be. We subtract that by the amount of money that we have coming in. We got $1,350, and now they actually have a profit on this one duplex here, right? Probably would be higher if they were charging more money. And if they were charging more money, they might even be above that $830 if they were charging $850, but who knows what the current current owner is doing at that property. So this is a profit. They're actually, when they move out, that the property will actually cash flow, where here it'll be what some people call an alligator, where they actually have to put a little bit of money into the property, but it's not a lot. It's not really a lot. If they were to raise that rent, it could get them a little bit closer, right? So these are some numbers I think your buyer is going to want to know, and they're going to definitely want to know these next numbers. Still in that duplex. So what happens is this: when a buyer uses a mortgage and they close on November 1st of this year, let's say, their first mortgage payment is not due until January 1st of next year. But what happens is, in that period of time between those mortgage payments that are being paid, the buyer collects the rent on those units, right? So he hasn't asked that other guy to sell yet, right? Because, give me here. Remember, this guy is there's still a tenant living in there, and he's got to be out by the time he leaves. So he can be out by January 1st, and the buyer can continue to get monthly payments on those two units. So he's going to collect $2,700 before his first mortgage payment is even due, right? And so one of the questions I like to pose here is, how many more months until he gets his down payment back, right? Because his down payment was, and going back again, forgive me, $4,725, going back again. So now at $4,725, that 27 is chipping away at it. Plus, remember, there's only one unit he's collecting rent on at that $675. He needs 3 months of rent, and he is even on his down payment. Now, let's say, hypothetically, you as the realtor are able to get him closing costs on this deal. That means, and it may not be hard because, there's not a mad dash going for these properties right now because they're investment properties. They're not owner occupied. They're not like single families where there's all these multiple offers and all this. These properties will sit on the market a little bit longer. Maybe you can get closing costs out of the seller, right? If you give him asking price. And so, and I created all this with the property at asking price without even asking a discount on the asking price. So after 3 months, if you get him his closing costs, he is even on this investment. So less than 6 months, right? Because the 2 months when he moved in, or the 2 months for him to for his mortgage payment, he can wait to move in if he wanted to, and then all of a sudden, here he goes. He's just a few months away from being even on this property. I think that's a really, really important feature and something you really want to point out to them and let them know that, look, this is like a net profit all the way around. All he has to do is live in the property another 6 months. And now he's got he's got that profit that we just talked about. Now let's look at something else here. If the buyer is going to pay an extra $300 a month toward the principal on the loan, that 30-year loan gets paid off in 16 years instead of 30 years into 193 months. Now, don't get me wrong. That's if the buyer is disciplined enough to not pocket any of the profit. And, he may have a roof that's got to go, and he may have an AC unit or two in the next 16 years. There may be some repairs he's got to do, but that's cutting his mortgage time in half. And if you're trying to sell this property to like a 28-year-old and you told him that by the time he was, 45 years old, he would have a free and clear, fully cash flowing duplex, giving him how much? Giving him $1,350 a month. Ooh, that number is going to be up from there because it would be 16 years from now. Maybe this is $2,000 at that point. I think that that's a number that your buyers are going to want to know about. And I think you, as the educated realtor, are going to be able to give them all of this type of info. But you can say, look, not only do you start to pay this down really quickly, you are even on your investment if you can get them closing costs in 6 months, So, okay. Anybody have any questions so far on what we went on? I know there was a lot of numbers and I kind of talked a lot there. And you guys have any questions on how that all went? Yes, I know the expenses can be a little bit more, but we're going to live with it at, so our first slide here, we're going to live with those expenses at $3,000 for now. Okay. I got 2 more properties that look just like this. We're going to do a 3-plex and then a 4-plex. Okay. But think about the low entry price on these properties. This is key, guys. They're buying a duplex with less than $5,000 out of pocket here, not including an appraisal and not including their inspection. But I mean, what are they at $525 at that point? $5,200 maybe. Okay. Let's look at a 3-plex. Here's the address again, right? This triplex is $225,000. Loan amount, actually, hang on a second. That number is incorrect. Sorry about that. Let me do this again real quick on my phone. I think it's incorrect at least. Forgive me. This number is correct. My math looks like it's off on one of these numbers, and I don't know which one it is at this exact minute. Sorry about that. So this is what their mortgage payment is going to be. I copy and pasted something wrong. So, but this is their mortgage payment on this, based on this loan amount. Again, 4.25 on a principal and interest payment. So this one's got 3 units, right? It's got a 1-1. There are 3 1-1s at $800 each. So remember, with this one, we have to remove because the buyer has to move into one of these units. And these 2 at $1,600 a month equal $1,920 per year income, right? We're not even really calculating cap rate on any of these deals either. We can, as far as an exit cap, once the buyer moves out, it wouldn't be an exit cap, but at least when a move out cap kind of thing. So taxes, I'm pulling this right off the MLS. I'm estimating the insurance policy here, and that gives us $337 per month, giving us a full mortgage payment of $1,427. I'm adding expenses here. It's a 3-plex, so I'm adding a little bit more expenses. So I'm adding about $300 in expenses here. And you can tell with your full monthly mortgage payment that his $1,600 of income off these 2 units is finally now covering his mortgage payment. And they're running this at basically at a profit, right? Of a little bit. There's some, 200 and change in here or whatever that is, And so again, what happens when the buyer moves out of the property? So that 800 goes to 3 now, because now the buyer buyer's getting income on this. And that 1,600 goes to 2,400 a month. But again, remember, this is not a fixed number, because these rents go up every year or every 2 years, or how often the landlord wants to raise them, So once we add our $300 expenses to our mortgage payment here, we get a $1,727. We minus that from our $2,400, and he's got a net profit monthly of $673. So again, think about the low barrier of entry that gets them in a position to cash flow money in a year, and they're cash flowing basically from day one, right? So again, the question is, how long till they get their down payment back? So again, if they close on the 1st of November, mortgage payment's not due until January 1st. Buyer is going to collect in that time $3,200, because this one only has 2 full units, at least that's the way it has it on the MLS, before the first mortgage payment is due. When we subtract that from the amount rest that's due, or subtract that off of the down payment, we're looking at 3 months of rent after he moves into the property. And so I still think that this is a really, really good feature of sort of like backing into an investment property by buying as an owner occupant, living there for a little while, and then moving on to something else. And if the buyer were to pay $500 extra in principal to that 30-year loan, it can get paid off in 16 years. And so I did this at 500 because once he moves out, his cash flow on this will be 673. If he simply just pocketed $130 and did like the really, really responsible thing and paid down his mortgage, maybe again, he has some expenses, and this 16 years turns into 20 years. But keep in mind, as he's paying this down, he's building all of this equity into the house, where the amortization is sort of like a forced savings account, right? And if with that amortization of the forced savings account and him paying extra monthly payments, and with the appreciation of the property, equity can build really, really quickly. He can refinance this. He can sell this. He can just run this down until it's a free and clear property. And he's just then getting, where is it again? $2,400 a month minus his other taxes. But this is still, I think this is pretty good, guys. This is cash flowing from day one. And again, has an opportunity to be a really strong property for him for the price of, what was the price on this triplex? $225,000. Now, again, keep in mind, some of these are, in some remote areas, but they only have to live there for a year to then be able to have another option at that point, right? Okay, let's look at a quad. This is in Tampa. Purchase price $335. Okay, something to keep in mind here, guys. So remember, we're looking at the purchase price is $335, and we're looking at basically we're running right up on the edge of the loan amount, the FHA max loan amount, right? What was it? It was 331. So this is slightly above the max loan amount, but his down payment is going to bring that loan amount below that, right? So they're just below the minimum, the maximum FHA loan amount. So down payment's a little bit higher on this one, right? Because the purchase price is going up. He's at $11,000 now. Again, not a ridiculous amount of money for a person to get to start to save. And then mortgage payments here, it's going to be $1,590 with a 4.25% rate again, right? So this one has a different setup where there's an efficiency here for $650, a 2-1 he's getting $1,200 for, a 1-1 at $950, and another 1-1 at $950. I actually spoke to the realtor on this one because I Her numbers looked a little weird, and she told me these are estimated numbers, and I only found that out after I built this presentation. So let's just say that these are accurate numbers and that the market will yield this to the buyer. Hopefully it will. We all know that you can't always trust realtor numbers on the MLS, but it is what it is here. So let's say the buyer is going to do the really, really smart thing and live in that efficiency so he doesn't have to sacrifice these other higher rent payments, right? If he were to do that, he would get a $3,100 a month, $3,720 a year. The taxes that I pulled off the MLS were $2,400. Insurance estimated again at $3,500. It could be lower. Again, this is a negotiable price. Remember, this principal interest payment right here is fixed. Taxes and insurance are not fixed. Those go up, hopefully, with the rent to stay with everything else. So these two together will give us $496 per month, and giving us our full mortgage payment of $2,000, $2,000 and change, which you can tell now is a lot lower than that $3,100. The property's already cash flowing pretty well on this one. So we do have some other random things, right, that we're going to keep in mind. We have our random expenses that we put in here. We're going to just estimate that at $400 a month. But still, with this together, they're doing pretty decent. It's at least above the mortgage payment. The rents are paying for their mortgage. Their mortgages, this person is living rent free. And so is the person living in the threeplex. They're both living rent free right now, or mortgage free. The rents are paying for the mortgage and paying for all of the expenses of the property. So let's say the buyer moves out after that 1 year and that income goes from $3,100. Now we can include that $650 again. Income is going to go to $3,700. And remember though, this is not a fixed amount because the buyer is going to increase the rents as the time goes on. So here's his principal and interest payment. Remember, again, half of this is fixed, half of it is not. Taxes and insurance are not fixed. Principal and interest is, but we're going to go with it for now. That is about $2,000. Once we take that $2,000, when we add our other random expenses of $400 to $2,400 and change, we're going to subtract that $2,400 and change here from that now new proposed $3,750, and buyer's going to make a little more than $1,200 in profit a month. Not bad, right? Not bad. So let's say you're able to get them closing costs. Let's say you're able to get them closing costs. And again, same set of circumstances here is where the buyer closes on, I'm going over this again because some other people have joined since we started. So again, let's say your buyer closes on November 1st of this year. Their first mortgage payment is not due until January 1st of 2021. And the buyer is going to collect $6,200 in between their first mortgage payment and them moving in. But the real question then comes down to how long does it take for them to get their mortgage payment back? How long to get their down payment and get even on this whole investment? Again, this is implying that you've gotten them their closing costs. If not, it takes a little bit longer. Maybe it takes, a couple more months. But we take that $6,200, we subtract that from the down payment and divide that by the monthly income the property makes when there's only 3 units full. That would only take them 2 months of rent, guys. This is killer. So in 4 months, they are even on their down payment. And if you got them closing costs, they're even on the whole investment. If they can't get closing costs, it'll take another, 3-4 months maybe. And in less than 7-8 months, they're even on the entire investment that it took for them to get into the property. This is numbers that I think anybody that's interested in rental real estate is definitely going to want to know. Because this gets them rent free, this gets them mortgage free, and this gets them a cash flowing property from day one, or from 2 months after they move in, basically, So again, if the buyer takes some of that money and then, I'm changing some of these numbers here, right? Let's say, their profit on this net profit's $1,264. Let's say they took half of that to pay down extra toward their principal. They can get a 30-year loan paid off in 15 years, in 185 months. That is pretty good. That is an accelerated timeline. And as long as nothing crazy goes on in between, which it might, like I said, a roof can go, an AC unit can go, other challenges can happen, and they don't have to pay it off in 15 years. But even if it was 18 to 20 years, because a couple of things happen in between, they're still cash flowing that whole entire time anyway, you know? And again, through their mortgage payments, they're pushing down the principal. It's increasing in value with appreciation. And this is a win-win situation for anybody that's going to move into that property, you know? So, okay. I know we just went over a lot, guys. Anybody have any questions on what we just did? If not, I'm going to show you something else. And so this is the MLS. This is the fourplex we were just looking at. But let's come here real quick. Okay. I'll show you how I have this set, right? I have this set on quadruplex. And it's just income, right? I went to here, income properties. And I'm sure you guys know how to find quadruplex, how to find investment properties in the MLS, right? So this is important because remember, you can see the prices start to get high on fourplexes pretty fast. And I have this set where you can see what the income is, at least being reported by the realtor. And this is also, this column isn't completely suspect as far as I'm concerned. I'm interested in doing my own numbers. I'll look at them, but I'm only interested in seeing how theirs compare to mine once I'm through here. So remember, when we get to about here on threeplexes, we're this far down the line and we are already outside of FHA from this point forward for using a 3.5% down payment. So it can happen pretty fast. I don't know why these guys have zero income going on here, but it's just the way the realtor put the listing up. It might be worth looking through all of these things or looking through all of these listings to find out what's going on here. I mean, some of these are mobile homes. I know because I already looked through a couple of them. So keep this in mind that when looking at fourplexes, the properties are going to get pretty expensive. They're going over $1 million. Some of them, these are like luxury properties and stuff on the water or whatever. But something important to keep in mind here. When we change this from a fourplex to a threeplex, the amount of results have increased. And what I'm kind of doing is I'm kind of looking at the amount of income versus the price, you know, because this has just increased. 225 went to 229, and there's another 10,000 of income according to the realtor here. I'm going to kind of come in here and find out what's going on. I want to look at that property. I'm getting curious now. And what do we have here? Mobile homes. This is not going to work because we can't do mobile homes with the FHA loan, right? We can't for the purposes of this at least. So that may explain why the income is a little bit higher, because when I come back here, and where was that one again? We had that big jump in price, right? Between these two. When I come back here and find out what's going on here. Okay, see, it's brick, a little stronger of a building, right? They don't have any interior pictures or any other pictures for that matter. Good grief. But okay, it is what it is. And they're 3 units at $500. And okay, you know, I'm going to dig a little bit deeper at this point and see if this is something that's viable for my buyer, you know? So even this one here, getting there here as far as the amount of money per month, big difference between these two prices and the amount of money that they're claiming that the property earns. I'm going to get a little curious here as well, because there's 2 units and I guess both of those are getting $1,400 a month, or is that $1,400 for both? This is when I call the realtor. Again, this is under the category of expected rent. Something to keep in mind when you're looking at these numbers here. So hang on, Maria, let me read your question real quick. So if they're going to pay, okay, they would need to pay that extra principal payment the whole time to reduce it to 16 years, basically. And it only makes sense after they move out when they have that extra income. But okay, so now these are threeplexes, right, that we're looking at. Now the prices are, you know, they start to get there after a while. Again, remember, we're right about here. We're out of the range of using FHA. So this, a little bit to choose from here. Don't get me wrong, but there's how many results? 58 results. When we hit duplex, though, a lot more results. It triples or it's 5 times the results at that point. And now prices are going to get a little lower here, which is, again, more manageable for a first-time buyer or for a millennial that might be borrowing a down payment or might be, you know, having to save their own money for this. And so, again, I'm looking, you know, just as far as net cap goes, it looks like it's or gross cap, it looks like it's a 10 cap, but it's really not. These are more like 6 and 7 caps once the buyer moves out. We could do a whole nother class on how to do cap rate. That's really a commercial class, but it's something all realtors should know, especially if they're looking at investment properties for sure. Again, there's a difference in these two prices here, and there's a difference between the return on what they're getting. And I'm going to get curious again, right? So now, again, I see this down here. That might be a manufactured house. Realtors aren't always going to give you all the details. Sometimes you have to look these things up on public record. And so that fourplex we were looking at, I just decided to look it up on their property appraiser site, right? And here it is, property type as a duplex, triplex, or a quadplex. That's just something that I am looking for sure. Because remember, you know, if they're paying cash for it, it's not a problem. But if they are not and using a mortgage, underwriter is 100% going to be looking at that. So if you want to be a hands-on realtor and then look at all of these rents and decide on, hey, you know, I could rent that property for you to get that number up. Like, why is that number so low? And if you think there's an opportunity there, you know, go for it. Showing here that it's a duplex. Looks like it's a decent enough shape. A couple of things on the roof, but the roof is metal. It'll probably go for a while. 600 and 600. Is that 600 going to cover the mortgage on $145,000 purchase price? Maybe not. If we were to try and do like the way I would calculate a really quick cap rate on this. I sit here all day long sometimes and just look at investment properties, right? So looking like this, we have, this is how we're going to calculate cap rate. We're going to do the 600 times 2 times 12. Now I'm going to subtract my taxes, minus 2,383. I'm going to minus an insurance payment. I'm going to estimate that at whatever, let's call it $2,000. Let's call it 2,200 because I'm going to be a little bit more conservative. Minus this, I'm going to minus some more expenses that I know I'm going to have. Let's add that another $3,000 minus that. We're at 6,800. Divide that by the 145. I'm doing this quickly, guys. Forgive me. This would technically be more of like a 5 cap, right? Because that's what, you know, it's 5% of the, if you paid cash for it, is the way this works. I'll explain it. Forgive me here, guys. I'm just going super quick with this. Just as fun. So I do this on all these properties. I want to see what kind of a deal it is. You know, so they're asking a premium for this property as far as the duplex goes versus the rents that are going in. Because remember, the house is not, this is not being, we're going to value this based on the amount of income it makes, not comps necessarily. We're doing this on as an income comparable analysis, not as a sales comparable analysis. But the mortgage companies are going to do it the other way okay. So forgive me, guys, I'm rambling here. But okay, so you're going to want to take a look at these numbers and see how you can get them the best return going on over here, you know, and go all the way down the line, make sure that they're not manufactured houses. And that's kind of about it for right now, guys. Okay. Do you guys have any questions about this? I know we went over a little bit here and I may have gotten into the weeds when we started calculating cap rate, but I want you to at least be able to look and see how to segment a database in the MLS and say, okay, this one's not going to work. That one's not going to work. And this is why, basically, you know? Okay. So guys, I do a video every morning. Feel free to check it out. It's called the Mortgage and Marketing Update. I try and keep it under 4 minutes. And yeah, I talk about anything that goes on in the mortgage world and the marketing world that I think is relevant to you guys and what you guys are doing. That is on your My Agent page. I have that backed up on this YouTube page here as well. Feel free to go look at those videos. I like Instagram a heck of a lot more than I like Facebook for sure. And you guys watch my videos know that much. And that is how to get in touch with me. Ignacio Plaza. Thanks, man. How's it going? Good to see you. Haven't seen you in a while. So, Eller, how do I add the net? Let me go through this and then I'll tell you. So this is my phone number. You can call me. You can text me if you want. You can email me here. I built this website called lilydemarie.com. It's also briandemarie.com. It's the same, bring you to the same destination. If you want to have your buyer apply online, this is the way to do it. unionalmortgage.com/LDemarie, because we run everything through Lily's name. If you're not on list reports, you 100% should be, because a bunch of killer marketing materials are there. Co-branded everything for open houses to mailers to social media stuff. They put a social media post that you can use once a day on all your stuff. I got a mortgage app as well through the company that you are more than welcome to get on. If you want to get on list reports or the mortgage app, what you'll need to do is email me your name, your picture, all of your contact info, your KV Core page, especially your Facebook, your Instagram, all your social stuff, and your photograph, your headshot, and I will add you into our co-branded marketing materials. If you sent that to me yesterday, thank you very much. I have not had a chance to get to those. So I was building this presentation for today. But I will get to all of those today before the end of the day. So, okay, let's go back to your question, Eller. How do you add the net? What you're asking is, how am I calculating expenses here? Is that what you're asking? Okay.
No, it's in the MLS. Where do you have the net income is? Let me see.
Yeah, annual net income here?
Yes.
Okay, so remember, again, one of the most important parts to remember is that this may not be coming from the seller. This is very possibly not accurate right here. I never trust these numbers